Hello, everybody. My name is Diego Strumper. I'm a research scientist at the Wikimedia Foundation, and today I'm glad to introduce you at the April 2025 Research Showcase. Research Showcase are all about recognizing and sharing recent research on relevant topics to the Wikimedia projects. And yes, for those of you that are joining live, we welcome you to ask questions to the speakers in the YouTube chat. We'll have my colleague Eli monitoring your questions and passing to the speakers. And we kindly ask the attendees to follow the friendly space policies and universal code of conduct that we have in the Wikimedia Foundation. So before I start with the duties for the showcase today's, I want to remind everybody that Wiki Workshop, our annual gathering bringing together researchers exploring all aspects of Wikimedia projects, will be happening virtually next month on May 21 and 22. And just to remind you that the registration is free and we are waiting to see you there. So I think this is the only announcement that we have for today. So with that, I will start introducing the topic for today. So today, the main theme that we are discussing is trying to understand the motivation of Wikipedia editors. Understanding the reasons that people have to edit Wikipedia is very relevant for us to be able to support the community and to build tools that facilitates their engagement with the Wikimedia projects. So for covering this topic today, we have two invited talks. First, we have Lighton Piri from the University of Zambia that is going to talk about his recent work called Zambian Wikipedia Contributors, assessing awareness, willingness, and the impact of gamified leaderboards and badges. After Leiden, we'll have time for questions, and then we are going to pass to Jan Chen from the University of Michigan, that is going to present their work entitled Motivating Experts to Contribute to Digital Public Goods, a personalized field experiment on Wikipedia. So with that announcement, let me give some introduction for our first speaker, Lighton. Lighton Pire is a researcher in the data mining and applied artificial intelligence at the University of Zambia. He's passionate about leveraging computing technology to address real-world challenges in resource-constrained areas, such as Africa. In recent years, Lighton's research has in part focused on exploring how software tools and services can help to improve visibility of online content, such as scholarly and research output. Lighton is also a founding member and principal investigator of the Data Lab Research Group at the University of Zambia. In addition, he is a principal investigator for the Enterprise Medica Image in Zambia project, and an ongoing project aimed to address challenges with radiological workflows in public health facilities in Zambia. So with these introductions, I open the mic for you, Lighton. Please, when you are ready, share your screen, and looking forward to hear your talk.
All right. I think I'm going to have to ask again. Thank you, Diego, to just for you to confirm if you can hear me just fine, and also if you can see my screen. So the connectivity tends to act up sometimes, but I've shared my screen, and hopefully you can hear me just fine.
Yes, everything looked good. We see your screen, and your voice is clear.
All right. Thank you very much. So I guess I have 20 minutes. So thank you very much, everybody. My name is Lighton Piri, and I'm going to be giving a talk titled Quantitative Analysis of Zambian Wikipedia Contributions, Assessing Awareness, Willingness, Motivation, and the Impact of Gamified Leaderboards and Badges. Quite a mouthful there. But it turns out that this work was actually done in collaboration with some 4 brilliant students I worked with a year before last. So this is the output of the capstone project conducted within the Data Lab Research Group. So this is going to be outline of my presentation. And I'll have to apologize here. I always do a bit of marketing here. So it turns out that I'm a founding member, as I mentioned, of the Data Lab Research Group at the University of Zambia. And in the event that you may be interested in finding out a bit more regarding what it is we do, just go to datalab.unza.zm. You'll find quite a bit of information on a broad spectrum of projects that we've been working towards, right, in publications. But it turns out that part of what we've been working towards over the last couple of years, really, I'd say 7-8 years, in fact, since I joined the UNZA, is somewhat related to what I'm going to be talking about. So we've spent quite a bit of time trying to understand why it is that content originating from the so-called global south, in this particular case Africa, is relatively low if you look at the online visibility, right? So the screenshots are just showcasing results associated with scholarly research output here. Bottom line here is that if you canvas online resources, what you begin to realize is that there's actually very little content stemming from countries like Zambia, for instance. There's also information about a project called the Enterprise Medical Imaging in Zambia project, which ideally is meant to work towards improving or working towards efficient and effective radiological workflows in public health facilities in Zambia. Also, I think it's worth mentioning that my presentation is actually an output or a result of research which was published in Springer Nature. There's a DOI on the screen. If you want details about what I'm going to be talking about, please feel free and visit the link there. Now, in terms of the motivation, right, it turns out that we've been doing quite a bit of thinking here as it relates to Wikipedia, right? And I do apologize if this screenshot is going to offend some people here, but I vividly remember when I was in graduate school coming across this news item, right, from Al Jazeera. And we all know why, mainstream media will do this. So they'll try and sensationalize things here. But in effect, what they were trying to highlight was this notion that if you look at content contribution on Wikipedia, the average Wikipedian, or the person that actually contributes content on Wikipedia, is actually a quote-unquote Western male, right? Now, this was a long time ago. This is like 9 years. So this was in 2016. But if you look at studies that have been conducted, you notice that this picture hasn't really changed that much. In addition, tied to motivation, it turns out that there's something really interesting in this part of the world, right? If you ask the average person about Wikipedia and specifically about how content on Wikipedia is created, you begin to realize that they have no idea, right, how Wikipedia actually works, right? What I have here, some screenshots, quite old really, but trying to put a point across here. There was a time, a couple of years back, when the government actually summoned media heads, right, for them to explain why it was that Wikipedia entry for the then head of state is now deceased, why somebody had defaced the page and insinuated that he had actually been assassinated, right? Now, if you have a situation where government is actually reaching out to mainstream media for them to explain, why it is the Wikipedia entry has been edited, then that goes to show that people don't really understand, right, how things work. Now, this was more than a decade ago here, but recently, a few days ago, actually, I came across an interesting post on one of the WhatsApp groups for members of staff at my institution, right? And somebody posted a news item associated with a person who was recently appointed as a cabinet minister, right? His name is Gift. And people were complaining that there's very little content about him on Wikipedia. And one of the interesting comments I noticed, this is on WhatsApp here, is somebody was claiming that AI was responsible for this, right? So anyway, point being that begin to realize here that anecdotal evidence actually goes to show that this issue to do with awareness is really a big problem in this part of the world, right? The other motivating factor for why we embarked on this research is what's currently prevailing, the rise of so-called large language models. For people that may not be aware here, it turns out that there's quite a bit of content from Wikipedia that is used as input to actually train these large language models. So the argument we are making as people in the Global South is if we are to ensure that these large language models actually produce effective results associated with the parts of the country we come from, we really need to take this notion of contributing content, not just from Wikipedia, but online seriously, right? There's quite a bit that has been written in terms of how this data is actually harvested and used as input to train these models here. And now, before I start here, by looking at the problem, I wanted to give you a bit of context about Zambia. Zambia is a fairly large, right, country. As of 2021, we had an estimated population of about 19.6 million, right? GDP of about $1,331 US. For those of you that are not really very familiar with this, I mean, if you compare this with the United States, for instance, what they're saying is that one person from the United States annually produces goods and services that are the equivalent of what 56 Zambians produce, right? Some other interesting statistics here tied to connectivity are that there's about 12.5 million mobile internet users, right? And I'm mentioning this because in the distant past, there were projects like Wikipedia Zero. I don't know how many people remember Wikipedia Zero here, but the idea was to try and provide free internet access to Wikipedia to people from countries like Zambia. But the argument here is that this problem is no longer there, right? Now, if you look at existing literature, you notice that there are people that have actually conducted studies that have quantified the relative contribution of content coming in from parts in the global south, like Zambia, for instance, right? If you look at this distorted map, it just goes to show just how bad the situation is, right? In addition, though, if you look at the general Wikipedia statistics, you begin to notice that there's a huge disparity between the number of users that actually consume content in Wikipedia. I use this 2 million page views from Zambia last month, against the number of people that are actually editing Wikipedia, right? So that's like 10 editors last month, right? Huge difference, right? And so what we did is we actually set out to try and understand why this was the case. And specifically what we set out to do was we conducted a quantitative study that was aimed at trying to quantify the relative level of contributions coming in from Zambia, right? And also we were interested in trying to find out the relative levels of awareness and willingness. I mean, we had anecdotal evidence that seems to suggest that this was a problem, but wanted to kind of get a sense of how bad the situation was, right? And then ultimately what we did was, using the users and gratification theory, we actually implemented a piece of software to try and gauge to what extent gamification would actually motivate people to contribute content, right? In terms of the first objective, in terms of quantifying Wikipedia content contribution, what we did was we just harvested content from Wikipedia. So if you go to a typical Wikipedia page, what you notice is there's a version history. That version history has details of the people that have contributed content. It's generally two types of people, right? So it could be a registered user. Like in this case, if you look at the red bounding box, it should be like the user Lighton Piri, yours truly. And then there's also anonymous users, right? To be identified by a public IP address. And so what we did was we set out to try and associate countries of origin from individuals, right, that had registered. And then also we used geolocations associated with IP addresses to try and infer the locations of these public IP addresses, right? In terms of the second objective, where we're interested in determining the levels of awareness and willingness, what we did was we conducted a survey, and we actually targeted two main types of users. So it was students at the University of Zambia and also the general public, right? These are entities we called people that are actually working out there in industry, right? And we use an online questionnaire to gather this data. Just trying to show you some overview of the questionnaire items. Of course, we had demographic factors, questions that were aimed at listing responses associated with awareness, willingness, and motivation. It's worth mentioning that all of these were tied to the users and gratification theory. So our approach to awareness, willingness, was actually rooted in existing theory, in other words. And then in terms of the gamification part, what we did was we implemented a Facebook plugin. So the idea behind this Facebook plugin is it would regularly extract information from Wikipedia, selected Zambian-centric Wikipedia pages, and then paste them on a Facebook page automatically, with the hope that if more and more people had the opportunity to actually look at the leaderboard, right, or the badges, and they'll be motivated to actually contribute content, right? In terms of the results, I'm just going to walk you through some interesting results. I'll start with the first objective, where we're quantifying Wikipedia content contribution. We purposely selected 4 Wikipedia pages. We ideally looked at pages that had really active viewership and edit histories in effect. And some interesting results here were that, if you look at the anonymous contributions here, it turns out that the topmost country of origin was the United States, right? Zambia actually is not even in the top 10 list of countries with the most edits for pages like the Zambian Wikipedia page. And then in terms of the registered users, what we noticed was that out of all the contributors from the 4 pages, only 8% account for edits coming in from Zambia. Now, it's worth mentioning here that our definition of Zambia is not really somebody who is actually a Zambian citizen, but it's somebody who is editing whilst in Zambia. That's our definition, right? And it turns out really that contributions from Zambia are not really on the top 10 list of contributions in pages, important pages like, the economy of Zambia and the history of Zambia Wikipedia pages, for instance. Just some graphs showcasing this problem. I know some people probably highlight the fact that, well, Zambia is on the top list of registered users for the Zambia Wikipedia page, but it turns out that if you drew down further, you notice that the reason why it's on the top 10 list is there were certain people that were classified as coming from Zambia that had a lot of micro edits, okay? If you look at, so these are registered user statistics. If you look at anonymous user statistics for the Zambia page, you notice that Zambia is 4th in position here. If you look at edit histories from the economy of Zambia page, you notice that Zambia is not on the top 10 list of pages, right? So in other words, what we're saying is that the vast majority of people that are contributing content about the economy of Zambia are actually not even Zambians, okay? Just showcasing again anonymous edits coming in from this is the economy of Zambia page, right? Now, to try and explain this situation where we had Zambia on the top of the list here, if you try and look at edits relative to the number of contributors, you notice that Zambia is not actually on the top, but rather it stayed, right? So if you count the number of contributors for the Zambia page, there were a total of 44 from the United States. This has 14 from Zambia, right? Despite the fact that the number of contributions from these 14 were significantly more than the contributions from those from the United States, okay? And then in terms of awareness, we ended up eliciting responses from 82 students and 60 participants from the general public. Some interesting results associated with awareness. What you begin to notice is a situation where, for the most part, a lot of people are not really, they don't really fully understand how Wikipedia works. I mean, they know that you can edit Wikipedia, but they have no clue what sort of policies guide editing of pages, for instance, right? So these are results from the students, and if you compare them with results from the general public, the picture is more or less the same, but with just subtle differences, right? And then if you look at willingness, for us, this was a big one because the results go to show that the vast majority of people from Zambia, both students and the general public, are actually willing, right, to contribute content to Wikipedia. If you look at the open-ended questions, it was on condition that they are actually guided or trained on how to do this. And then in terms of the factors, remember I mentioned that our study was rooted in the users and gratification theory. And so what we did was we used the theory to guide the development of the tool, right? So the results that we got from the users and gratification theory aspect of the survey seem to suggest that you could actually motivate people by sort of like trying to award them points or to gamify some sort of application, if you will. Okay. Again, just showcasing some results associated with perceived motivation factors associated with responses from students in this particular case, and the general public. All right. And then again, just a quick walkthrough showcasing some open-ended comments that were coming through from the general public. If you scan through these open-ended comments, you begin to realize that there's quite a bit of enthusiasm, right? In regards to users wanting to contribute content on Wikipedia, okay? In terms of the design and the implementation of the Facebook plugin, just screenshots showcasing how the software toolkit was implemented. So we had an administrator panel, which was ideally used to run a scheduled job on regular intervals, which would then interact with the Graph API. So this backend service would interact with the Wikipedia API or MediaWiki API to try and pull statistics from Zambian pages, and then push those statistics to a Facebook page, so that people would be able to see some sort of a leaderboard or something, right? Something that you're seeing here. And the idea behind this is we're in effect trying to figure out what would be more effective, using badges or perhaps using is it a leaderboard, right? In both cases, what you're trying to do is you're trying to encourage people to motivate by enticing them to look at what their colleagues have done, right? Again, in terms of the evaluation that we did with the tool, so we conducted an expert evaluation of this software toolkit, in essence, the Facebook page. And we had some really interesting results. I thought I would share some open-ended comments that were coming through from the expert reviewers here. The system was really motivating. I enjoyed seeing my name on the leaderboard, right? Suggesting that there's a potential of, applying gamification features in the Global South, right, to achieve important objectives like trying to encourage people to contribute content to Wikipedia in this particular case. So just to wrap up, what we did was we conducted a study that was aimed at quantifying the relative levels of contributions on Wikipedia coming from Zambia, insofar as Zambian pages are concerned. And then we conducted a survey that was aimed at determining the relative levels of awareness and willingness, and also to determine the motivation factors that would encourage people to contribute content on Wikipedia. And then ultimately, implemented a piece of software that was gamified, with the hope of trying to assess to see if, that piece of software would encourage people to contribute more content. Now, I want to take this opportunity to highlight some really interesting things. This is just the beginning of our work. We are hoping we can take our work a step further. We know that students are willing to contribute content. If they are willing to contribute content, we can take advantage of the more than 100 higher education institutions in the Republic of Zambia to train, students by providing them with the necessary support, right, so that they can help us contribute content on Wikipedia. And perhaps something else that is worth mentioning here is, and I'm just going to context switch because I still have a bit of time. For people that have not looked at last year's Community Insights report, what you begin to notice is that results associated with motivation factors actually aligned with some of the findings that we had, right? So I'll draw your attention to the section, if you haven't gone through this report yet, the section that speaks about motivations for contributing to Wikipedia projects. Something else I've been trying to do here is I teach software engineering courses and programming courses in some instances. And so in the process, what we do is we scope out group-based projects that will be aligned with aspects of Wikipedia that are aimed at trying to see various ways that we can take advantage of to try and increase the visibility of, or rather to increase the contributions associated with content editing on Wikipedia from places like Zambia. Thank you very much. I see I have about a minute left. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Lydon. Thanks for the presentation. It was super interesting. Eli, do we have questions from YouTube?
Hi, Diego. Yeah, thanks for the presentation, Leighton. We have a few questions coming in. I'll do my best to get in as many as we can. The first question is, why was Facebook chosen for Wikimotivate? Was it based on data or user behavior insights? Leighton, you're muted.
Leighton, you're muted, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Thanks for that. So we chose Facebook for a very simple fact that it's one of the most popular social media platforms in this part of the world. So if you look at Twitter, I mean, there's virtually very few Zambians on Twitter, right? So most of the viewership, so far as social media is concerned, is on Facebook. So that's the reason we chose Facebook. But really, the idea could just as well be applied to Twitter or perhaps even Instagram or something, any social media platform. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll jump right into another question if that's okay, Diego. This question is the audience members wanting to know about any correlation between leadership board exposure frequency and contribution levels.
Right. So unfortunately, right, most of the people that actually responded to our survey had not actually edited Wikipedia before. So this was a controlled study, controlled in the sense that what we did was we first of all had them edit, right, and then we had a leaderboard that was specifically focused for the Wikipedia page that we're editing. So the vast majority of the participants had no prior exposure experience actually editing. It's actually quite sad. Almost every year, in my third year software engineering course, I will ask students, right? I'll just do a simple survey. How many of you have ever edited Wikipedia? And in almost all the cases, none of them have edited. So zero exposure in this particular case.
Do you have more questions, Eli?
Yeah, there's actually a pretty good stream coming in. I'm doing my best to read through them as we go here. A related question was, what factors did you consider when analyzing the effectiveness of leadership leaderboards and badges on motivating contributors?
Well, so remember, I mentioned that we conducted an expert evaluation, in part because we did not really have enough time to conduct the evaluation. So also it was in a controlled manner. So our interest was to identify, our experts here, definition of expert here, students that understand how software works, right? And they were taught how Wikipedia actually works. And so what we did really was we actually had a questionnaire item that was aimed at trying to find out which of the approaches they found effective. Are you more motivated if we use a leaderboard versus a badge? Right. So that was a comparison. A comparison was the intervention really was the type of the type of intervention was whether it was a leaderboard or a badge, in other words. So we didn't really look at any specific factors rather than just comparing those two. And really what the results show us is that the vast majority of participants in this study preferred a combination of a leaderboard and a badge. So both. Thank you.
Diego, can I go ahead with one more?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, I'll try to pick out one that's maybe a little bit different in nature. Another question is, somebody from the audience would like to know, is there a way to differentiate between factual edits and opinion-based contributions using data mining? Would you like to comment on that?
It's possible. It is possible because it turns out that if you study Wikipedia, right, if you go, and really it's not difficult, if you just go to the version history of Wikipedia, what you begin to notice is that you can look at, you can actually gain a sense of what the diff is. So what exactly was contributed, and be able to classify as being minor or a major, edit, if you will. So in as much as it would be possible, it will actually be difficult because what you'd be doing here is for each of the version history entries, you'd have to extract the piece of text that was actually used to amend that page, right? It's actually, it's a problem that would probably be computationally intensive, in my opinion, but not to say that it wouldn't be possible. Really interesting potential future work, if I might add. Thank you.
Thank you. We have also some questions from the room, and
Okay.
depending how we're in time, maybe we can also have another one from the chat. So Tanya, you have a question.
Hi, thank you so much for this presentation. First of all, I want to say I worked on the motivation questions in the Community Insight Survey, and I'm so glad to see them being helpful to somebody as well. But my question was about, we know that newcomers to Wikipedia, especially English Wikipedia, I think, can have a hard time contributing. For example, being reverted too quickly, or maybe not having as much support as they may need. Did any of the participants in your study sort of experience reversion? And apologies if I missed this. And was the leaderboard helpful in sort of mitigating that hard feelings that come from being reverted?
Yeah. So the one thing, shockingly, right, and this is a shock because I teach these people software engineering. These are third years. Most of the participants were like third years. The one thing they cited was the relative level of complexity associated with Markdown. So the markup language that is used to edit Wikipedia. And I think that's really strange here because if you think about it, Markdown has more or less become mainstream, right? You find it in all sorts of places now. Even Facebook uses its own modified version of Markdown, for instance. But there was that, right? And also, I think because this was done in a controlled environment with people that had not yet edited before, if they were provided some sort of support by way of training, I think in a short period of time, they'd actually find it relatively easier to edit. But in terms of trying to see if we were able to address these issues in the leaderboard, no. This was done in a controlled environment. Our focus was on the two interventions. We were essentially trying to figure out which is better, a leaderboard and a badge. And to give people an idea here, right? In the future, and this is stuff that we are hoping we can actually work towards in one of the capstone projects this year and perhaps next year. In the future, we are saying part of what we can do is we can have a modified version. It doesn't have to be a Facebook. It doesn't have to be a Facebook page that is automatically created, for instance, but it could be an ad in a newspaper, right? Appreciating somebody. It's some aspect of gamification in there if you think about it. So yeah, the thing that came up the most was the complexity associated with the markup language. Thank you. But then again, if I can maybe add on something, if you permit me, maybe part of the reason why these so-called newcomers in our experiment did not cite any other challenges is because these are technically inclined people, right? These are people that have been studying information and communication technologies for a total of about 3 years, right? Because the study was undertaken, or the evaluation was undertaken towards the end of the academic year. So as these students were transitioning to go into fourth year, which is the final year of study for their respective programs.
Thank you very much. I think we have 1 minute for one more question from the chat, Eli, if you want to.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Diego. Yeah, there are quite a few questions. I'm gonna apologize. We won't have time to get to all of them. But there's one topic that I'm seeing emerge in a few of these, and it's the topic of VPNs. So for example, this relates to the earlier part of your presentation. One person asked, would VPNs affect the analysis of origin of country of edits? And then somebody else, yeah, just sort of asking how you considered that when you were doing your analysis.
Right. I mean, wonderful observation there. Now, I did mention that our definition of a Zambian here is we're looking at the IP address. So there are two different things we're looking at, right? The registered users. So this was a qualitative kind of approach where would actually literally visit the user page. We could have automated this, but we're visiting the user page and look at the bio information and check exactly which country that person was coming from. And then we had anonymous edits, and this is where the question is coming from, right? Unfortunately, for the anonymous edits, the issue of the VPN is part of the limitation. But the argument that can be made is that you wouldn't really have significant entries utilizing VPNs. Something else worth mentioning here is that it turns out that there are data sets that are compiled by Wikipedia, for instance, that we could have used, but because of the relative effort that was required for us to seek permission to gain access to the data, we didn't really have time. And because this was not our primary objective, we decided to just make do with the approach of just making use of the IP addresses, irrespective of whether somebody was using a VPN or not. So it's entirely possible that, for instance, somebody who was using a VPN whilst in Zambia was tagged as not being from Zambia. But I want to draw attention to something important here, right? At the very beginning, I had a map, right? A map that kind of supports the results that we found, this thing here. On a month-on-month basis, right, what we are seeing is that there's only about 10, like last month, only about 10 editors from Zambia, right? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I see there's a lot of comments in the YouTube chat. We will have some time at the end of the presentation to have more open discussions with both speakers. So thank you very much for all the people that is participating. For us, that's very relevant and very important. And thank you for your participation. Now we are going to pass to the second speaker. Second speaker is Yan Chen, that is a professor in the School of Information at the University of Michigan. Her research interests are behavioral and experimental economics, market design, and digital economics. She has served in various editorial positions at the Games and Economic Behavior and at the Management Science. And she was also president from 2015 to 2017 of the Economic Science Association. And she's also a fellow of the Economic Science Association. So Jan, the mic's yours.
Thank you. So let me share my screen. Okay, so everyone can see my screen.
Yes.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a great honor to present our paper at the foundation. So this paper was published in Management Science in 2024 and with open access. So we in the study try to investigate what motivates domain experts to contribute to Wikipedia. It's joint work with Roster Farzan at the University of Pittsburgh, Bob Kraut at Carnegie Mellon. Bob is here. And our former students, Imaya Kazari and Ark Zhang. So let me talk about motivation and define digital public goods very briefly. So user-generated content of all sorts belongs to the category of digital public goods. So economists characterize them as being non-rivalrous, so my consumption doesn't reduce your consumption, and non-excludable. So in Wikipedia's case, the non-exclusion is by choice. But a very interesting and important characteristics of digital public goods is that expertise matters. So unlike production of physical goods, the inputs are not perfect substitutes. So if you have more expertise on a subject, that means your contribution might have higher quality, your marginal cost of contribution is lower, and you might derive identity and affect from your active contribution. So we are going to explore the effects of expertise on Wikipedia contribution. So we study what motivates experts to contribute to digital public goods. And we look at two specific aspects. One is to look at social impact. So if an article has a lot of viewers, which means you can influence a lot of other people, would that make you more likely to contribute? The other factor is how motivating are private benefits. And the last part, which is not part of our causal analysis, is to look at whether accurate matching of expertise with the task increases contribution quality. So in this audience, I don't need to say how important Wikipedia is and who contributes to Wikipedia. So I think our unique contribution here is to look at domain experts' motivations. So here's an example. So this is the Wikipedia page on instrumental variables. And the beginning, it says it's used to estimate causal relationships when controlled experiments are not feasible. But if for researchers using instrumental variable estimations, they would know that this is a characterization of the early phase of research. Now, we often use instrumental variables in our analysis of controlled field experiments. So it will be easy for an expert to correct or to update this, this statement. So I'm going to very quickly go through the literature review, which is a bit skewed towards economics. So there's a large literature on voluntary contributions and mechanism design, and also a large literature on, lab and field experiments on public goods in general. So we draw from that literature. And the literature, this is a very incomplete list of scholars who worked on what motivates Wikipedians. And you can think of Wikipedians as insiders. They're already editing. What differentiates this research is we look at what motivates outsiders. So almost all of our domain experts have never edited Wikipedia. So we use a field experiment. There is also a theory section, which I'm going to admit. So all of our hypotheses and experiment design are derived from the theoretical analysis. And it's in the appendix of the experiment. So we use what's called a factorial design. So we vary the social impact factor, where we downloaded, we processed the data dump the month before our experiment, and we computed the average number of views of a typical Wikipedia article. And in our case, it was 426. And then we exogenously vary the view of the article. So the high view condition says that, we'll only recommend articles that's been viewed at least 1,000 times. But in fact, all the articles in our selection have been viewed at least 1,000 times per month. On the private dimension, a private benefit dimension, we have 3 levels. One is we do not mention any citation benefit from contributions. The second level is we mention that there might be, we'll send you articles that might cite your work or might refer to some of your research. So this is all different ways of saying the same thing. And the third level is to both mention the citation benefit and also say that we will acknowledge your contributions publicly. So this is to essentially look at people's social image motivations. So we had a total of about 4,000 participants. And before we run the experiment, we run a pilot experiment with 142 academic economists. And our power calculation is based on the pilot data. So here's an overview of the experiment design. So there are 6 conditions altogether. So we vary the view and the citation, different benefits. In parentheses, what you see is the number of observations, the number of experts randomized into each experimental condition. The participants are academic economists, partly because we know a little bit about the subject matter. And we retrieve the information from WPEC, which is a working paper archive for economics. And part of the reason for using this archive is because, they don't prohibit us users from downloading the user email data. And they have all sorts of other features, which is nice, including the ranking information and each author's abstract view, how many times have this author's paper being viewed. So we selected experts who have posted at least 5 articles in English, and that gives us about 4,000. And what you see here is the just move this far away. Okay, is the number of publications on WPEC. So selecting 5 basically means we cut off a lot of the early career researchers. So this is a drawback. So did I see? Okay, here we go. And we also, what we did is we matched Wikipedia articles to an expert's most recent papers. This is the detail of the algorithm. And notice that each article has to be viewed at least 1,000 times in the past 30 days. The experiment design is a two-stage design. So in stage one, we send a personalized email invitation to the experts. I'll show an example. And we personalize the subject line and the email text and implement the treatment. In the second stage, once the expert says yes, then we recommend relevant articles to the experts. And then we send a thank you email. So here's an example of the personalized email. So we say, the first paragraph is common to every expert. Would you be willing to spend 10 to 20 minutes providing feedback on a few Wikipedia articles related to, so this part is personalized, behavioral and experimental economics, that's your specific field. And then we say Wikipedia is really important, and we anchor everyone's, the impact belief on the average number that we process. A Wikipedia article is viewed on average 426 times each month. So this particular expert is also in the high view condition. So if you're in the high view condition, you get the second paragraph. And here we say, we'll select only articles with over 1,000 views in the past month. So this doubles the basic, the average view. And this expert is also in the citation benefit treatment. It says these articles may include some of your publications in their references. So we interpret it as private benefit. Another way to interpret this is that it is it's a signal that is a good match. So either way. And then Bob and I signed the email because we were at the time the only tenured member among the research team, and just in case something goes wrong. So the public acknowledgement is under Wiki Project Economics. So this is a complete list of authors who contributed in our pilot study. And then after our study was finished, we actually updated the list with everybody who contributed. One can argue, how public is the Wiki Project Economics page? That's subject to debate. And once they say yes, we immediately send them 5 articles matched to their domain of expertise. So this person is in the citation high view treatment. So we reinforce the treatment message, and we give them the actual number of views in the past month for these articles that's matched to their expertise. And you notice that, all of them actually have much higher views than 1,000. Then there are a couple of features that we thought was important. One is to lower the barrier, the entry barrier. They don't have to learn how to edit Wikipedia articles. We basically send them to our own server, and we have a static Wikipedia article on the right-hand side. So this is a split screen design. They can roll, click and roll up and down, and they enter their comments on the left-hand side. This is primarily to lower the entry barrier. The emails are always sent during daytime of the expert's local time. 84% open the first email, and there are 3 types of responses. We verify the comments manually before posting it to the Wikipedia article talk page. So let me present the results. Here's an overview of, expert response at each stage of the experiment. So we contacted about 4,000 people to start with. 84% of them opened the first email, and 600 were dropped. And of these 3,300 experts, about half of them said yes. Then they entered the second stage. they receive a second email, and 1,500 open the second email, and a third of them actually commented on at least one article. On average, they commented 2 articles. So we collected, excuse me, about 1,100 expert comments, and we posted on the Wikipedia talk pages, or article talk pages. So the first figure is the treatment effect. So we have 2 sets of results. One is the using causal inference techniques to look at what's the cause of various motivations on contributions. So what you see here are the 6 experimental conditions. The white bar is the average view, and the gray bar is the high view. And here you add citation benefits. So here's the baseline, no citation, average view, citation benefits, and citation and public acknowledgement. And one thing to notice is that in the baseline, well, we don't mention citation benefit, and we just give you the average view. The positive response rate is really high, it's 45%, which is higher than previous experiments. And then we look at what's the effect on participation, and this is our regression specification. So all of these high view, cite acknowledge, and so on, these are all dummy variables. And we also add expert level controls. So we anticipate that high view, citation benefit, is going to increase their interests. Compared, high view is going to dominate, average view, cite is going to be more than no citation. Cite and acknowledgement is going to elicit higher interest than citation alone. And so for the first stage response, the table that you see here is the average marginal effect on the first stage response. We use multinomial logit because there are 3 types of responses. Positive is say, yes, I'm interested, or no response. And the third one is, of course, a negative response. What you see here is that citation at high view increases positive response rate by 6 percentage points. And that's about 13% relative to the baseline response rate. All of these adjusted, the standard errors are all adjusted for multiple hypothesis testing. So basically the citation at high view condition, this experimental condition, increases positive response rate and reduces negative response rate. The second hypothesis is to look at the reputation. So we compute the reputation by looking at the abstract views of their paper on RePEc. And we see that actually has they're more likely to just disregard our email, and those with high reputation, they're also more likely to just immediately say no. So the effect is essentially a 1 standard deviation increase in the log abstract view is associated with a 25 percentage point increase in the likelihood of a negative response. And now we're moving to the second stage, which is once they're willing, we match them with the Wikipedia articles, about 5 Wikipedia articles. And how do we get to the comments? So we're going to measure contribution length and quality. Length just by word count, and quality we use rater evaluation. So we have students from economics rate these. So the inter-rater reliability is quite high. The other exogenous measure, external measure, that the rating was of good quality is that a 1 point increase in median overall quality increases the probability that the comment is incorporated by a Wikipedia into the article itself by about 10 percentage points. So in the analysis, we're going to use the median rating for quality. So one measure that we're going to use between the 2 documents, the experts abstract and the Wikipedia article, is cosine similarity, which essentially measures the overlapping vocabulary of the two documents. And so we're going to use this. So here's an example of the type of comments we received from the experts. So for the Wikipedia article, Traveler's Dilemma, this is a game theory article. The original comment about experimental result is just one sentence. When the game is played experimentally, most participants select a value close to 100. So this was the first experiments, summarizing the first experiment, testing the Traveler's Dilemma. The proposed change, excuse me, is highlighted in red. So the experts said that when the game is played experimentally, most participants select a value higher than the Nash equilibrium and closer to 100. More precisely, the Nash equilibrium strategy solution proved to be a bad predictor of people's behavior in the Traveler's Dilemma, with small bonus malus, and a rather good predictor if this bonus malus parameter was big. So this one actually summarizes about 20 years of research on this game. The expert was a professor at the University of Rome, and so we inferred his expertise from the paper that he published, which is much later and also on the same game. So this is the nature of a high quality comment. So here's the prediction for the second stage, but they're quite intuitive. And now I'm going to look at, basically show some regression tables that looks at treatment effect on contribution length. This is unconditional, which is its intention to treat effect. If you look at the dummies, the treatment dummy variables, nothing is significant on contribution length in the second stage. But cosine similarity, which is the match quality between the expert's abstract and the Wikipedia article, is significantly associated with contribution length. So now we're going to, so the bottom line is there's no treatment effect on contribution quantity or quality in the second stage. What we do instead is to essentially using the predictive approach. So what you see here is all the variables which predict, contribution length, and quality is very similar. And so this is the from the random forest model. So the top three factors are the person's seniority, year of PhD, cosine similarity, which is the match quality, and article length, the original Wikipedia article length. So these three factors are way ahead of all the other factors, including the treatment variables. And if you look at quality and using the same, using the random forest model again, you see cosine similarity, article length, abstract view, which is reputation, a proxy for expert reputation, and seniority. So the top factors actually overlap quite a bit. So now I'm ready to conclude. So in stage one, when we try to elicit experts' interest, we find that, citation, mentioning the citation benefit at high view and, is motivating. So basically you need private benefit and social impact. In the second stage, eliciting high quality contributions, citation and public acknowledgement at high view is significant in the conditional analysis, but not in the unconditional analysis. Then we resort to predictors of contribution length and quality. So the top predictors are match accuracy, approximated by cosine similarity, the expert's reputation, and Wikipedia article length. So, to increase contributions, domain experts' contributions to digital public goods like Wikipedia, it seems that citation in combination with social impact, private and social impact, as well as the matching of expertise are important interventions. So that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this super interesting presentation. We have still a few minutes for questions. So, Eli, do you have questions from the chat?
Hi, Diego. Thanks for the presentation, Jan. We do have some
thank you.
questions coming in.
Okay.
Yeah, so the the first question, this topic has come up a couple times, but people are wanting to hear you talk a little bit more about how you figured out which experts were a good match for certain articles. Related question here. Yeah, again, sort of what features you were using to measure match quality.
Yeah, so what we used was we take the 5 most recent working papers from the expert from RePAC. So the experts post their working papers on RePAC, and we take the 5 most recent one for each article, for each of the experts' working paper. We compute the cosine similarity of the abstract, of the article abstract, with various Wikipedia articles and find the one that is a good match. And so we did this 5 times. So for each of the 5 articles, we find a match with the Wikipedia article. And in fact, we actually received certain some feedbacks from experts privately. So some people just emailed back and said, "Oh, of the 5 articles that you sent to me, 2 of them are good." So then we manually check and realize that yes, so the others are not quite good. Quite as good, and the reason is because cosine similarity is a fairly coarse measure, and we didn't have the time to actually do the match with the entire. I think if we take the entire paper, it would be better, but we only had the time to do the abstract and the Wikipedia article matching. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Diego, may I ask one more and then maybe we switch to in-room questions?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, we had a question. This person's wondering if you considered breaking down the data somehow between high and what we might consider high and low controversy articles, possibly as measured by either one or both of reverts and talk page reply activity. I think the person commented that the idea behind this question is they're wondering about how certain editors may be drawn to controversy, but they have a hypothesis that expert contributors maybe are often not. Yeah, is that a topic you considered at all or have thoughts about?
That's a really good suggestion. So we did not consider this. And in fact, later on, I mean, after we finished the study, some of our colleagues pointed out that, some of the articles that we sent out for comments were quite controversial, but they for instance, minimum wage is one example. Whether minimum wage actually raising minimum wage would decrease the demand for jobs or has no effect. And so those are fairly frontier, labor economics research. And we didn't, I think the suggestion about, both the number of reverts and the talk page reply activities are really good. And we could look into that in our future studies, but right now, in this paper, we did not look at that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have questions from the room here? If there's
Bob,
Yep.
if you have additional comments or feel free just to chime in.
Please.
Yeah.
I guess one of the interesting results were that experts were more likely to comment on higher quality articles, presumably the ones that actually need less work.
Yeah.
Similar, they're more likely to comment on longer articles, which is an indicator that it's higher quality. Again, they're gravitating towards articles that need less work for some reason. So that's
I thought about that as well. That's interesting that but when we selected articles, we screened out articles which are featured articles. So we screened out sort of the highest quality articles and primarily took intermediate quality articles because we asked them to comment. And so if there's a fair amount of content already, it's easier to comment rather than a stub. I think we also screened out stub and star quality categories.
Thank you. Eli, I think we have time for one more question from the chat if you want to add one.
Yeah, we had just one more come in just now, sort of a maybe more technical question, but what was the criteria used for the article length to participate or to be included in the research? I think you're sort of commenting on that just now, but.
Yeah, so we had, actually, there is a slide on that. I'm not going to show the slides, I'll just read off of it. I did not spend much time on it. So the article selection, it has to be a main article and it's not edit protected, it's not a stub, and not a featured article. It has to have at least 1,500 characters and have been viewed at least 1,000 times in the past 30 days. So being viewed at least 1,000 times, basically, it's for our experiment, the internal validity of our experiment design, but it also says that there has to be some public interest in that article.
Thank you very much. I think this is a good segue for. I have a question for both presenters, Jan, also Bob, if you want to give your opinion, also for Lighton. I feel that there are different views from both studies. In one, in the last one, we see that basically, if you are closer to the topic, you are expert on the topic, you feel more likely to contribute there. And in the other hand, we were seeing that when we're talking about the economy of Zambia, most of people was talking very from outside. No, it was people that was not at least physically close to the topic. So I know that this is probably not part of the studies that you run, but what is the role, and this is a super open question for discussion, what do you think is the role of self-confidence in the motivation for participating in editing Wikipedia? So it's a matter of expertise, it's a matter of, it's just a matter of expertise, or it's also a matter of feeling confident about your knowledge or feeling confident in general, like some kind of personality traits that can also play a role in these motivations. Open question for all the speakers.
If I
Leighton, you want to go ahead and
Yeah, I mean, I was going to mention, I mean, if you look at the two studies, right, vastly different here if you look at the levels of expertise. So the focus for a study presented by Jan was on, I mean, these are, she was making mention of PhD students and all that, compare and contrast with undergraduate students, right? And also, the other important factor here to take into account is the fact that probably the vast majority of the people that they were targeting in this particular case had probably an idea of what it takes for you to edit content on Wikipedia. So a couple of different things. But to answer your question on whether self-confidence plays a role, I would say for somebody who's just getting started, maybe, right? And this is purely based on anecdotal evidence, and for the most part, the experiences that I had myself, right? Incidentally, when I saw that Al Jazeera article more than a decade ago, that was a trigger for me. That's how I jumped onto the Wikipedia bandwagon here. At the very beginning, self-confidence certainly played a role, but eventually, after a couple of months of editing, I knew exactly what I needed to do. So I guess to a certain extent it does, but maybe it depends on, I would argue one of the key factors would be how often this person has been editing content on Wikipedia. Yeah, thanks.
So I think in our study, the self-confidence is probably correlated with expertise. And so for this study, we don't actually have data to measure self-confidence. We have there's a separate experiment that we're still writing up. So we asked intermediate, students taking intermediate microeconomics class to edit Wikipedia articles on a concept, economic concept, such as, income elasticity, or a biologist, sort of economist bio page. And we find that, so the concept, the econ concept, requires more, confidence that I actually could do it. And they're all concepts that was covered in this class. And we find that women actually are less likely to edit the econ concepts compared to the bio page of an economist. But the interesting part is at the end of the class, the women actually have a higher GPA than the men. And so there's no reason to be less confident. So our interpretation is that there is sort of a lack of confidence in editing the Wikipedia, the econ concept in Wikipedia.
Thank you very much to both presenters, also to Bob that came here. It was a super interesting conversation. There was a lot of reactions in the chat. I think this is one of the showcases with more participation. So thank you very much for everybody that was participating in the YouTube chat. If you want to continue the conversation, we invite you all to subscribe to the Wiki Research L mailing list. So it's wiki-research-L, and you can continue the conversation there. So also you have the information about speakers. So if you want to reach directly to them, you have all the information there. Again, thank you very much to all the presenters, and also thanks to the team that made this possible, the coordination team. I thank Eli and Kinneret that were in all the preparation for this event. Also, Eli, thanks again for your role taking and bringing the questions here, and to everybody that asked questions and participated. So just a reminder, you already know, next month there's a wiki workshop. So we won't have the research showcase because we will have wiki workshop. Remember, May 21 and 22. Subscribe, register there, participate, and we see you again in this showcase in June, in 2 months more. But see you first in the wiki workshop. Thank you very much, and see you soon.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thanks to all the organizers and also the audience for participating.
Yep. All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.